All right, let's jump into another deep dive. This time we're digging into Bazaar Style Retail Limited.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we've got their Q3 and 9-month FY25 earnings conference call transcript from January 29th, 2025.
Okay.
So pretty recent stuff, and we're going to use that to really understand their business,
It's fresh off the press.
Exactly. Their industry, how they see the future. And plus, we always find some really interesting little details in these things. And this one is no exception.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you know they've got a very unique approach to store expansion and a surprising connection to a certain regional celebrity?
Oh, all right. I'm intrigued now.
Yeah, well, you'll have to wait to find out who it is.
I'm hooked.
Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Bazaar Style, they're a value fashion retailer, and they're really focused on those tier 2, tier 4 cities in India.
Okay, got it. Makes sense.
Now, what's their game plan in a market that's already pretty crowded?
Well, they're doing something different. They're offering a really different experience compared to, the typical unorganized retail that's common in these areas.
Okay.
So they're bringing the organization, air conditioning trial rooms.
A wide selection.
Wide selection, exactly. And aiming to attract those customers who are looking for, a little more...
Yeah, they want to, elevate the shopping experience.
Exactly, elevate it.
But keep the price...
Competitive. Yeah, competitive.
That's the key.
Now, apparel seems to be their bread and butter, 87% of their revenue.
Yeah, but they're not ignoring the general merchandise either.
Right.
13% still comes from that. So they're becoming like...
Yeah, a little more rounded option for the whole family.
Exactly. A one-stop shop, almost like...
Like a mini department store.
Yeah, almost like a mini department store.
Okay, well, let's zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
What's the industry outlook for value fashion in India?
This is where things get interesting.
Okay.
They see a huge opportunity for growth in this sector. Okay.
Huge, and they believe that the shift from unorganized to organized retail, it's still in its early stages in India.
So lots of room to run.
Lots of room to run a long runway ahead.
That's some serious confidence.
Yeah, it is, especially when you think about, some more developed markets. They only have a few dominant players.
Right.
But Bazaar Style, they actually believe that India's cultural diversity is a key advantage here.
Okay.
They see room for multiple large value fashion retailers, each catering to specific regional tastes.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, and preferences, and they think a healthy same-store sales growth, SSSG, that 8 to 10%, it's achievable even with existing competition.
That's a bold statement.
It is bold, but it seems like they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Well, they are projecting, continued revenue growth of 25-30%.
Wow.
And aiming for that 5% PPAT margin.
Profit after tax, PR margin.
That's in the next 5 or 6 quarters.
Those are ambitious goals for sure.
They are, and it'll be interesting to see how they balance that aggressive growth with maintaining profitability.
Yeah, especially with the challenges in value fashion, with those typically thin margins.
Absolutely. And speaking of growth, they're not holding back on store expansion.
No, they're not.
45-50 new stores in FY25.
Okay.
Exceeding their initial guidance of 35.
That's a lot of new locations.
That is a lot. And it's not just about opening stores anywhere.
No, they're being really strategic with it.
They are. Tell me about this cluster-based strategy.
Yeah, so it's about deepening their penetration in those core markets.
Like, where would those be?
So areas like Bihar, West Bengal, Assam, Odisha.
Okay.
Where they already have a good presence.
So they're doubling down on what's working.
Exactly, solidifying their dominance.
But they're also going into new territories, right?
Yes, strategically establishing new clusters in what they call focus markets, like Uttar Pradesh and Jharkhand.
Okay, and so what's the split there?
They're aiming for about 70% of new stores in core markets and 30% in those focus markets.
Okay.
With the goal of turning those focus markets into core markets within 4 to 6 years.
So it's like dominate the known and then strategically conquer the new.
Exactly, a two-pronged approach.
I like it. And they're not just relying on location, they're also using some pretty creative regional marketing strategies?
They are definitely. They even mentioned a collaboration with Kesari Lal, a popular Bhojpuri singer and actor, for a music video promoting their brand in Uttar Pradesh.
Okay, so...
really connecting with their target audience on a cultural level.
Yeah, they're using someone who's already a familiar face.
Exactly.
In that region. It's all about creating that local connection.
It is.
But let's face it, no growth story comes without its risks.
That's true.
What are some of the challenges Bazaar Style might encounter on this ambitious journey?
Well, one thing they specifically mention is seasonality.
Okay.
Festivals like Durga Puja, they have a big impact on their sales, particularly in those core markets.
Okay.
And this year, the timing of Durga Puja actually shifted a lot of their sales activity into Q2.
Okay.
Which made their Q3 results look a little bit weaker in comparison.
So you can't just look at one quarter in isolation.
Exactly. You need the whole picture.
It's like trying to judge a restaurant's success just by how busy they are at lunch.
Exactly. You got to look at the whole day.
Yeah, the whole thing. Okay, so what else?
Another risk is maintaining profitability while they're expanding so aggressively.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a balancing act.
It is.
They'll need to keep costs under control while they're still investing in that growth.
And staying ahead of the competition.
Exactly.
In a pretty crowded market.
Yeah, it's a high-stakes game.
It is. And let's not forget those execution risks.
Oh, yeah.
Opening new stores, implementing new technologies.
Things can go wrong.
A lot can go wrong.
It's one thing to have the plan, another to actually execute it.
Perfectly. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here, but the numbers tell an even deeper story.
Okay, let's dig in.
Let's take a closer look at Bazaar Style's financials and see how their strategy is playing out in the real world.
All right, sounds good.
So let's unpack those numbers.
Let's do it. Bazaar Style reported a 24% year-on-year revenue growth in Q3 of fiscal year 25, hitting over 4 billion Indian rupees.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is, but they also mentioned a 3% dip in same-store sales growth during that same quarter.
Okay, so how do we reconcile that with this upward trajectory?
That's a good question, and it goes back to what we were talking about before.
Seasonality.
Exactly, seasonality. Remember, Bazaar Style, they generate a significant portion of their revenue from areas where Durga Puja is a major shopping event.
Right, so the timing of that festival can really shift things around.
Exactly. Precisely this year, Durga Puja, it fell 11 days earlier, pushing sales that would typically be in Q3 into Q2.
Okay.
So while their 9-month performance, it shows a healthy 10% same-store sales growth, that single quarter, it tells a different story.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that context is key when you're looking at these numbers.
Absolutely. You can't just look at one data point in isolation.
Nope.
Now, another interesting detail is their emphasis on pre-Ind AS as financials.
Okay, I'm curious about that. What's the difference and why should we care?
Well, sometimes Indian accounting standards, they require companies to account for expenses in a way that might not reflect, the day-to-day business reality.
Okay.
So these pre-Ind AS financials, they often strip away those technicalities.
So it's about getting a clearer picture of how the business is actually performing.
Exactly. A more direct look at that core profitability.
Got it.
And when we look at those pre-Ind AS figures, Bazaar Style achieved an EBITDA of around 827 million Indian rupees for the first 9 months of FY25.
Okay.
That's a 23% year-on-year increase.
That's significant.
It is, and they're projecting to close the year with an EBITDA of around 950 to 980 million rupees.
Okay, so it seems like they're striking that balance between, that aggressive growth and that sustainable profitability.
They are, but their strategy, it's not solely focused on expansion.
What else are they focused on?
They're laser focused on inventory management and technology as well.
Okay, they mentioned reducing their inventory per square foot by 200 rupees compared to last year. What's the significance of that?
That's a big deal. It's a strong indicator of operational efficiency.
How so?
Well, they're essentially selling more with less inventory. Which is excellent for cash flow and profitability.
It sounds like they're really optimizing their operations.
They are, and they're investing heavily in technology to further streamline those operations, enhance inventory management, improve the customer experience.
So they're playing the long game here.
They are. It's not just about short-term wins,
right,
but building those systems and processes that can support their ambitious expansion plans.
Makes sense, but let's not forget about the competitive landscape.
Right.
They acknowledge the challenges of maintaining profitability in a market that's becoming increasingly crowded.
Yeah, the value fashion retail space, it's getting more competitive.
It is.
They'll need to constantly innovate, in their offerings and operational efficiency to stay ahead.
It's a constant race.
It is.
To offer the best value proposition while keeping costs under control.
Exactly. And of course, execution risks are always a factor.
Right.
Opening new stores, implementing new technology.
Yeah, there are a lot of potential pitfalls.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
But they seem to be approaching it with a good mix of, ambition and caution.
Now remember, their regional marketing strategy. Well, there's another layer to that, which I found fascinating.
You're talking about how they tailor their product assortment and pricing to specific regional preferences?
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
They recognize that what sells well in Bihar might not resonate with customers in Uttar Pradesh.
It's about recognizing those nuances of each market. And in a country as diverse as India, that granular understanding can be a major advantage.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying to integrate themselves into the fabric of each community they serve.
I think so.
So to recap, Bazaar Style is on this aggressive growth path.
Yeah.
Driven by store expansion, operational efficiency, and a deep understanding of regional dynamics. And they're doing all of this while trying to maintain profitability, manage seasonality, and mitigate those execution risks.
It's a lot.
It's a complex puzzle.
It is.
But they seem to have a good grasp of the pieces. Now, the question is, can they put it all together and achieve those ambitious goals? What do you think? Makes you wonder what their success would mean for the future of, value fashion retail in India, if they can pull this off.
Yeah, that is the big question. If they can execute this ambitious plan while maintaining profitability, it could really signal a major shift in the industry.
It would be a pretty powerful statement that a homegrown Indian brand can not only compete, but, potentially dominate in a sector that's often associated with international giants.
Absolutely. Their success could inspire a whole new generation of Indian value fashion retailers, all vying for a share of this rapidly growing market.
Yeah, and it could even push those existing players to step up their game,
right,
leading to more innovation and ultimately better choices for consumers.
It's a win-win for the whole industry.
It is, but let's not forget the challenges. Value fashion. It's all about those thin margins, constant pressure to keep prices low.
Yeah, it's a tough game to play, even if you're doing a lot of things, right?
So Bazaar Style can't afford to get complacent.
No.
They need to stay adaptable, keep their finger on the pulse of consumer preferences, and constantly look for ways to improve their operations.
And they need to navigate that ever-changing regulatory landscape, manage their supply chain effectively, and of course, keep an eye on their competitors.
Yeah, it's not a game for the faint of heart.
It's not.
Absolutely, it's a high-wire act for sure. But from what we've seen in this earnings call transcript, they seem to have a strong team, a clear vision, and a deep understanding of the market.
And don't forget their unique approach to growth, that cluster strategy combined with that hyperlocal marketing. It's a powerful combination.
Yeah, it could give them a real edge in the market. So for you, our listener, here's a final thought to ponder. Given their ambition, their regional focus, and their willingness to experiment, do you think Bazaar Style has what it takes to become the leading value fashion retailer in India?
What factors might contribute to their success? What challenges might they stumble upon? It's a fascinating journey to watch unfold.
It's a story of growth ambition and the relentless pursuit of capturing the hearts and wallets of India's value-conscious consumers. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another look behind the scenes of a company making waves.